God-level duplication system. Chapter 70. Chi transformation. In the end, with Li Hang's suggestion, Lin Xuan spent over 2,000 contribution points to exchange for a large number of medicinal pills, herbs, and other cultivation resources. After that, he left in satisfaction. The other disciples looked at Lin Xuan's back as he left, and their faces were filled with envy. In the outer sect, even Chen Yuzi might not have more than 2,000 contribution points. It was even more impossible for ordinary disciples like them. However, Lin Xuan just casually spent it. The gap between them was too great. Was this a genius? They were far inferior to Lin Xuan. All the disciples were sighing in their hearts. Not long after, Lin Xuan returned to his courtyard and arrived at the cultivation room. He sat down cross-legged, took out the Qi condensation pill, water essence fruit, and other cultivation resources, and began his cultivation. This time, he would break through to the Qi transformation stage and enter the inner sect. The outer secretary was no longer worth his time. Time passed slowly. Unknowingly, 4 days had passed. In the cultivation room, a surge of energy slowly spread out and swept up layers of Qi waves. Lin Xuan opened his eyes. When he looked at the void in front of him, his eyes flashed with a trace of light. I have broken through to Qi transformation stage level 1. Lin Xuan felt the strength in his body increase several times, and he slightly nodded his head. He stretched out his hand and pointed. A sword Qi flew out of his fingertip, leaving a long scratch on the opposite wall. I have already removed the true Qi from my body, Lin Xuan murmured. This was the most obvious characteristic of a Qi transformation stage. With his current strength, even if he didn't activate the concept, he would be able to defeat Chen Yuzi in one move. At the same time, he had also witnessed how terrifying the spirit-grade cultivation talent was. Initially, he thought that it would take him at least half a month to break through to the Qi transformation stage. But in the end, he only used 4 days. He had broken through from the Qi gathering stage level 4 to the Qi transformation stage level 1. Among them, there were many minor realms and a major realm. If Lin Xuan told others about his cultivation speed, he would probably scare them to death. The only one in the outer sect who had broken through to the Qi transformation stage was Chen Yuzi. And he had spent more than a year. Who would be like Lin Xuan, who had only used a few days to reach the Qi transformation stage? Furthermore, he had immediately consolidated his cultivation base after breaking through, which was why his strength had greatly increased. It could be said to be extremely shocking. Lin Xuan finally understood the benefits of having a powerful innate talent. It looks like I have to focus on improving my innate talent in the future, especially my cultivation talent. Lin Xuan murmured in his heart. He continued to scan the attribute panel in the void in front of him. There weren't any major changes. Only his cultivation base and the energy points had changed. I've already accumulated 340,000 energy points, not bad. Lin Xuan looked at the number of energy points underneath the attribute panel and smiled even more. After 4 days of seclusion, he obtained another 100,000 energy points. Although his performance in the outer sect competition had indeed caused quite a stir, however, as time passed, this commotion gradually calmed down. At the very beginning, the energy points growth speed was the fastest. Later on, it would become more and more stable until it completely faded away. Lin Xuan estimated that it could only reach 400 to 500,000 watts in the end. And these energy points were also enough for Lin Xuan to duplicate many high-grade treasures. Lin Xuan was also very satisfied. After that, Lin Xuan put away the attribute panel and Qi transformation stage's power and stood up. It's time for me to go to the inner sect. Lin Xuan stretched his body, then turned around and left the cultivation room. He spent some time putting everything he needed in the courtyard into the storage ring. Finally, he looked at the courtyard with emotion, then strode towards outer hall. He didn't expect that he would have to move to the inner sect because of the advancement of his cultivation after only staying in the outer sect for a month. If this continued, his cultivation speed would become faster and faster. He estimated that he wouldn't be able to stay in any place for long. Lin Xuan thought to himself. However, none of this was a big deal. He came to this world to see better and more beautiful scenery. At the same time, he wanted to experience something that he had never experienced in his past life. He shouldn't stay here for long. After that, Lin Xuan calmed down. Not long after, he arrived at Outer Hall. Outer Hall governed everything in Outer Sect. 1. A person had to pass the test of the Outer Hall in order to become a disciple of the Inner Sect. When he arrived at the Outer Hall, Lin Xuan's eyes swept across the place. He found that although this place wasn't as lively as the Golden Origin Hall, it was still bustling with noise and excitement. But the quality of the warriors walking around is much higher. Even condensation spin stage deacons and spirit opening stage elders of the Outer Sect were not rare. Unfortunately, the treasures on these people were very poor, so it was not worth him wasting the energy points to copy them. Lin Xuan shook his head and walked towards the inner area. He came to the counter at the side and cupped his hands, saying, "Deacon Sun, I have broken through to the Qi transformation stage. I want to enter the Inner Sect. Please inform the elders." Every disciple of the Outer Sect had to go through the necessary procedures to advance to the Inner Sect. After all, the disciples of the Inner Sect were considered one of the best among the disciples of the Outer Sect. Each of them had a chance to reach a higher level, and at the very least, they would become deacons. Therefore, they naturally needed to be valued. Behind the counter, Deacon Sun, who was flipping through the books in his hands, nodded when he heard this and said, "All right, I'll inform Second Elder." However, when Deacon Sun was halfway through his sentence, his expression suddenly froze and he was stunned. "You said that you are called Lin Xuan?" "Yes, I am Lin Xuan." Lin Xuan replied indifferently. "How is that possible?" This time, Deacon Sun could no longer remain calm and could not help but exclaim. Outer Hall was the most important place in Outer Sect. The atmosphere here was solemn and quiet. Deacon Sun's exclamation spread across the hall. He attracted the attention of almost everyone in the hall. After that, everyone followed Deacon Sun's gaze and looked at Lin Xuan. They looked at Lin Xuan's face and sensed his qi. The scene became silent at first, then it became noisy. He seems to be the #1 Lin Xuan in Outer Sect. But his qi doesn't seem to be at the qi gathering stage, right? That's right, he's at the qi transformation stage. He just said that he wants to break through to the Inner Sect as well. How is that possible? 4 days ago, during the competition of the Outer Sect, wasn't he just a qi gathering stage? How can he be a qi transformation stage now? How could this happen? Everyone was discussing in low voices. Their eyes were fixed on Lin Xuan, and they were filled with shock and disbelief. The news of what happened during the Outer Sect competition a few days ago had already spread to the public, and everyone knew about it. Through the few deacons and the Outer Sect's Grand Elder, they all knew that Lin Xuan's cultivation base was at Qi Gathering Stage Level 4, and he could be considered a Qi Gathering Stage middle stage. In just a month's time, he had broken through to the Qi Gathering Stage, the middle stage of the Early Enlightenment stage. This cultivation speed was extremely fast. However, none of them had expected that Lin Xuan would be able to break through his limit once again. 4 days had passed since the Outer Sect competition started, and Lin Xuan had arrived at the Outer Hall. He was about to break through to the Inner Sect.